Hello, darlings. You're listening to Heaving Bosoms, the podcast where two friends talk about a new romance novel each week. This week, we surprised ourselves, opting for sweetness and ambiance over our usual smutty requirements. We're skipping the pleasantries because there's enough goodness to go around with Sarah Addison Allen's Garden Spells. Enjoy!
Today we're keeping with our Halloween theme and doing Garden Spells. It is a book about two sisters who are witches. Basically, if you liked practical magic, but you didn't really like the dead guy or the weird ants, or you really liked Como Agua Para Chocolate, but you didn't really like the tragedy of that book, this is the book for you. It's just two kind of vaguely witchy sisters in a quaint town in South Carolina, and it's about them falling in love. I listened to this book on a plane back from Thailand last year, and I listened to it on Audible, and I found it to be very, very charming. Reading it back, I didn't like it quite as much. I know for sure on the way back from Thailand, I had dengue fever, so I think that kind of,
Oh, God.
kind of colored it. What did you think, Mel?
All right. I really liked it, but I have a couple of caveats to that. One is, if you're in the mood for throbbing manhammers and slooshing lady excitement, you should leave this on the shelf. But if you're in the mood for, like the casual paranormal setting, a family love story, a couple of friendship love stories, character development, there's some really lovely whimsical lyrical phrasing, and it's less of a Southern tingle book and more of a skipped heartbeat book, if you will.
Can you explain to me, Melanie, what a Southern tingle book is?
It's the one where, like, 40 pages in, they are explicitly going downtown. It's the one where they're describing genitalia and all the things that they're doing with those sets of genitalia.
So you mean Southern?
That's what that is.
You mean Southern as in
tingling
down...
your bathing suit parts.
Okay, all right.
Yes, a Southern tingle book.
I thought you meant Southern as in the region.
That's not what I meant at all.
Okay, all right. 'Cause I was like, is there a specific kind of like regional tingle book?
No,
okay.
it's a bodily region, not downstairs in your heart parts.
Yeah, this is definitely an emotional romance.
I mean, I would tear up at a lot of it, and I don't know. Stories of family redemption really get to me, and that's a lot of what this book is. It was delightful.
All right, so we have Claire. She's 34 years old and thus a dried up old bag, the book would want us to believe. She lives in a big old house that she inherited from her grandmother and mother, I guess. And the house is kind of a character in the story. It's kind of personified. Like when people get mad, the pots will move, or it'll get like warm in the house, or like there's a lot of like things that happen, creakiness and stuff. Just kind of cool. And this town of Bascom it's one of those small towns where they want you to believe that every family has like a thing about them.
Yes.
And I think this is kind of true of small towns.
Yeah, I'm from a very, very small town. At least in Oregon, when I moved there, it was less than 400 people, and it's in the Guinness Book of World Records for being completely fenced in. Literally, because it's in the middle of free-range cattle country. So the whole
like
town
Stephen
is...
King's The Dome was your hometown. It's like completely enclosed.
I am not familiar with Stephen King's The Dome. I don't do scary stuff ever.
Right.
But yeah, you knew that one family, like any boy in the family, was going to be trouble. And you knew that another family was going to be, not very good at math, but, really good at sports or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I think
yours are charming. Like my hometown is more like, oh, that family does specifically meth, or that family is really greasy.
So I was just about to add that, though. When logging declined, because that was one of the main economic boons in the area, meth really took over. So meth and prescription pain pills
Oh, yeah.
So the charming left quite a while ago.
Well,
the charming in Bascom never leaves, though.
Exactly.
Never.
So Claire and her sister Sydney, which will come in, are Waverly women, and the Waverlys, all the women have kind of magical gifts. Each one has a particular magical gift. We meet some Hopkins men. Hopkins men are born old and their bodies catch up with them, I think is what she said, which I found very charming.
It's very cute.
We meet some Clark women who are particularly good at sex and desperate for it.
Yeah, the Clark women, man, they're we'll get into that later. Woof.
Yeah. So Claire's gift is that she's particularly good at gardening. They have a magical garden in their yard that has a magical apple tree and various magical herbs. The apple tree is a character in the book. It throws apples at you. It writes messages in the ground.
It really wants you to eat its apples.
Yeah, and if you eat one of its apples, you will have a vision of the most important time in your life, the most important event in your life. And for some people, that's a really scary thing. And for some people, it's a really wonderful thing. So because of that, people either really want to eat its apples or people really don't want to because they're scared of what they might see.
I mean, it was a little frustrating, Erin, honestly, because I was ready for a book like Her Halloween Treat. And then all of a sudden there are literally notes that I have here that's like, all right, well, 60 pages in, there's been no kissing even. All right.
You texted me.
112 pages in, and there's not even been a handhold. I would like our listeners to know going in that there is zero completion in this novel. And so you can enjoy the beautiful writing with no anticipation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll get to it, but there's several love stories in this book, but they're almost all emotional. So Claire's gift is that she cooks with things from the garden and she gives them to people, and then they feel certain things or have some kind of magical qualities the food does. And then she also has a cousin, an older cousin or older aunt, maybe. They're not really sure how they're related. Named Evanelle.
Yeah, they're cousins.
And
did you say Evanelle?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I listened to it on Audible, and that's how the narrator on Audible said Evanelle.
So I didn't have my Southern accent hat on.
So her whole thing is that she gives people things and she doesn't know why, and then eventually the person needs the thing. So her whole thing is she's this old woman who pops around town all day and just hands people things like tweezers or grass seed or
condoms.
Yeah, condoms, whatever it is. And then the person eventually needs those things. And there's all these stories of Evanelle gave me, God, what was it? Evanelle gave a little boy a spoon and he used it to dig up a quarter, and then he used the quarter to go to the movies, and then he met his wife at the movies. Things like that, little sweet stories. So we've got her.
So wait, and I have to interject here because Evanelle is an excellent supporting character.
She is a delight.
She is, just from start to finish, absolute fucking delight. One thing on page 49 of the paperback, it opens up to the first words of that chapter are from Evanelle's perspective, and she says, "There was an art to the male posterior. That's all there was to it." And she's just full of
this character
little insights. She's 90, and every morning she goes to the track so that she can watch the boy butts run in front of her. It's really great.
And she likes going to the track too because people are running so fast that she can't catch them to give them things.
Yes, so the urge doesn't strike her as much then.
Anyone right. So the first thing that happens in this book is that Claire goes to a catering event. She uses her talent to own a catering business, and groups hire her to do dinners and stuff. There's a lot of descriptions of food in this book that are delightful. She makes this violet petal, a lot of flowers in cooking. There's a cake with violet petals in it that I remember from this first one, and really
and her whole specialty is edible flowers, and then outside of Bascom. Within Bascom, it's a bit of a hardship because all of the families know that you can accomplish things with her food. And so they'll order particular dishes trying to evoke feelings from their guests.
Right.
And she doesn't have to deal with that when she caters outside of Bascom.
Right. So she caters this event that's for the arts department at the college, and she meets Tyler, who's one of the guests there. And Tyler is our hero. And
one of them. Ugh.
What do you mean? Did you hate some of them?
No. Well, yes, I did. But I didn't hate them, but I was prejudiced against them because of one of their names.
Okay.
I don't do double names, everyone. I don't like it.
So our first description of Tyler, to me, is a little rough. It says his dark hair almost touched his shoulders, which for me is like a, ugh. Like,
oh, I love that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. His dark hair almost touched his shoulders. His arms and fingers were long. I was like, ugh. And his lips were fuller than she'd ever seen on a man.
Yeah.
He was trouble. Like, those three things did not do it for me. There are descriptions later in the book where
I saw great possibility with those full lips.
No, I just imagined like this like gangly, I don't know.
Okay.
I imagined like lady lips is what I imagined.
All right. I hear you. But on the other hand, one of the things I really liked about this book is that we didn't have outlandish descriptions of human perfection. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that drives me a little bonkers. Like, at one point, I think they look at Tyler and say he has some awkward features. Mm-hmm. I really like that this book embraced the fact that you don't have to be a paragon of masculinity or femininity or whatever in order for someone to find you really fucking hot. I just appreciated that because it felt more real world to me. It felt more charming. It felt more attainable, if you will.
Right. No, it felt realer to me.
And he's an artist.
Like right off that Claire, he's a great guy. It's just physical descriptions were not doing it for me. And it's very clear that Claire was really about it as soon as she saw him. Mm-hmm. I just was not personally about it from the beginning. I warm up.
Fair enough.
So she, like, they both feel this like electricity at the catering event when they see each other. It's like a magical electricity sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Then afterwards, so earlier in the day, Evenelle had given Claire a big lighter. When Claire is walking out of the catering event, like loading up her boxes and stuff, she sees Tyler leaning against a tree and he's got a cigarette and he asks her for a light.
And he's also glowing purple. He has little sparkles are coming off of him because, and that's why I described it as like a casually paranormal or casually mystical because there's no ceremony to her presentation of this. She's just like, dude's glowing purple.
Mm-mm. Yeah. She just kind of adds it in every once in a while. There's no like formula to it at all. It's just like every once in a while. And it's not even just around the Waverleys who, these two sisters are like witchy. It's not just around them. It's really around everybody. They talk about another love story that happened a long time ago where a guy talks about how every time he stood under a tree, the leaves would get singed because he was so hot for this woman. Yeah. It's like, well, he's not a witch. Like, this is just like a through thing. It's kind of nice, though. I liked it. Mm-hmm. So when she hands him the lighter, this is an excerpt that I wanted to read. She felt like she had water against her back, pushing her toward the deep end as she walked toward him and extended the lighter. She stopped a few feet away, trying to keep as much distance as possible, digging her heels in as whatever force it was tried to take her closer. He was smiling, easygoing, and interested. He had an unlit cigarette between his lips, and he took it from his mouth. Like, I just really liked that there was this, like, force. Like, she was literally digging her heels in, and there was something, like, pushing her toward him. I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah, I will say, though, that this was the part of Tyler that I was like, well, hard pass. I don't do smokers. Which is weird.
Says that...
Well, that's not even true. I try to say I don't do smokers. Michael smoked when we met. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to bring that up, but
I know. You were trying to be charitable. You were trying to be like, listeners, Melody never is a hypocrite. And that's just not true.
I remember a time in college where I came home and my mom was like, I came home, brought my laundry, and my mom was like kind enough to be washing my sheets for me. This isn't going where you think it's going. And she was like, your sheets smell like smoke. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And she was like, have you been smoking? And I was like, no. And she's like, why would your sheets smell like smoke then? And I was like, I don't, Mom.
No reason.
Yeah. Anyway,
maybe
I
a
think
burglar?
Being a cigarette smoker is how my mom figured out that I was doing it. Okay, yeah, so he asks for a light, and she's just such a bitch to him because she doesn't want to fall in love. Claire's very, like, set in her ways. She likes constant things. We get a little bit of what her childhood was like here, where she talks about so her mother ran away from Bascom when she was pretty young, took Claire with her, and for the first 6 years of Claire's life, they were kind of like on the road. The mom was having like anonymous sex with men in bars and stealing to take care of them. They didn't have a home. They were just kind of around. Then when her mother became pregnant with Claire's younger sister, Sydney, which will soon come into play, she decided to return to Bascom to make sure Sydney had a life. And Claire has always kind of been resentful of that and felt that now she has a lot of abandonment issues. She wants to stay in Bascom. She wants everything to be set and controlled and no one to leave her ever again. So she's like kind of in this bubble.
Right.
And she's always really resented Sydney.
That is definitely the way that Claire describes it. And it's definitely the way that she perceived it throughout her life. We will learn that, okay, just logistically, if we can just put our logistical hats on here, it's hard enough to be homeless and, sort of a vagabond traveling from place to place. Then with one child, that gets compounded tenfold because you're trying to find a place for yourself to sleep and a place for your daughter to sleep. I don't know that she went back to Bascom specifically because her favorite daughter was born.
Right.
And she wanted that baby to have security, whereas her other baby was a piece of shit that she hated. Like, that is definitely a 6-year-old's view on what happened. And I liked that because Claire held on to that her whole life. And she clung to the house. She clung to her grandmother because they were the steady, dependable things that she could stick with. And then, really resented her sister. But that's not what happened.
No, I understand.
Not why she went back. But yeah.
But now she doesn't want to fall in love because she's worried that will be temporary and that she'll get left again and all that kind of thing.
Bitch,
so she's trying to really resist
overwhelming abandonment issues.
Yes.
And I hear that.
So she's trying to resist Tyler. And then we may as well talk about Sydney now. So Sydney then was born in Bascom, and then when she was about 6, her mom took off again and left the 2 girls with the grandmother. So Sydney's version of this whole thing is she got left and stuck in Bascom while her mom went off and had adventures without her, and she really because she grew up without her mother. Her mother was like this myth. Yes. That went and did cool things. So she wanted to do the same thing. So,
well, and Grandma Waverly sounded great.
Yes.
But on the other hand, I don't know that I would be so cool with watching an older sister bully a younger sister the way that she apparently was. Because Claire, for all of her wonderful qualities, when she was younger, she really resented her sister and took that out on her by excluding her from the activities that Claire was doing with Grandma Waverly. They would cook together. Grandma Waverly was giving her all of these, tidbits of her wisdom and training her to garden and to cook and to exist the way that she did. And part of that was, I'm sure, because Grandma Waverly saw her personality and her talents reflected in Claire. But I'm sorry. I don't know if it's okay to just like hum along as you watch an, 10-year-old or 12-year-old shoo a little one out of the kitchen because she wants to stir a pot of soup. No. You whack that 12-year-old, at least verbally.
But wait.
And you make her and include the whole goddamn family, Grandma Waverly. Why would you do that? Poor thing, Sydney would sit in the hallway and listen to them like mutter to each other and bond over recipes and mystical goddamn sage. No.
Okay, at the same time, Sydney's no angel. She's
I hear that
Claire.
too.
Claire, Sydney's popular in school because she's the pretty one, the younger one.
She's the pretty one. She's good in
if
public.
You will, Nicole Kidman character here.
Ayo.
And she's popular, and she's making fun of Claire mercilessly once they get to high school, to the point of like she went to the Halloween dance dressed as Claire to make fun of her.
Absolutely.
So, Sydney's no angel.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that she didn't react badly afterwards, but I don't know that I would have any love lost with an older sister who I adore. I mean, because the unwritten thing here is that any young child looks at the older people in their lives and they want to emulate them. They want to be included. They want to be part of the family. So if I've been kicked out my whole life by this monster of a teenager, yeah. I'm not going to be nice to her either.
I really like this part, though, because I feel like so many times, especially in these kinds of books, you get sisters that are just like perfect. They love each other perfectly, and there's no trouble between them. Like, it's not, when Claire and Sydney, when Sydney comes back, which we haven't even talked about how she left, but when she comes back, it's not just like, oh my gosh, my long lost sister, I'm so happy to see you. It's weird for a while because of these issues that they have, and I really like that.
I did too. I mean, granted, so I was reading this and I had a really hard time because on the one hand, I sent you a text, I think.
It said, there's no sex, and I'm 86 pages in. I think that was verbatim the text.
That was one of them. But I think I said something like, I'm really excited for the budding sister love, but I did not come here for that. However,
I know, and I was reading it and I was like, man, I don't think this book is as good as when I listened to it when I had dengue fever.
No, and that's the thing. It's good.
It is good.
It's a good fiction book. It's just not a Hammer Time book.
No, but it is a romance. It's a romance on several levels. Like, there's 5 love stories in this thing.
And I mean, not to mention the family redemption, the friendships that you get to watch, the friendship love stories, because I really do think that there are definite love stories within a friendship.
Why? Do you think there's a love story in our friendship?
Of course. Are you kidding? My personal Instagram, the first photo is me asking you out on a friend date and you saying yes with a heart around it.
Did you know that our friend-iversary is October 15th?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's tomorrow. That's so exciting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
We digress. Okay, so Sydney left when she was 18, like right out of high school. Sydney takes off because she wants to be like her mom, and also she went through this particularly hard breakup with a man named Hunter John.
And I don't do double names. Fuck that guy.
But like, I felt like Hunter John was like the perfect name for this toolbox. Like,
it is. No, his personality reflects his awful dullard of a name.
So what happened with him was basically like a reverse Notebook, in my opinion. Like, he's from this great family, and his family allowed him to kind of slum it with Sydney for a little bit, date a Waverly for a little bit, but like everyone knew that he was going to end up with a Clark woman. I forget his last name, but he's from this affluent family, and they end up with Clarks.
And Clark women always marry well.
Yeah, and Clark women always get their man.
And they keep their men.
And they keep them. So Hunter John is in love with Sydney all through high school, and then he dumps her right after graduation because, like, he can't end up with a Waverly woman, and she's, like, poor, and, So Sydney takes off, and she has adventures in New York and San Francisco and Las Vegas, and she's, like, got different names, and she's dating men and stealing their money and just, like, living crazy.
Yeah. She really this section of her life really reminds me of the character from Showgirls. That's all I could imagine the whole time.
Which character?
What's her name? Like Jessie Spano. Yo. Obviously. So because she steals and she gets her Versace dress and she's cocktailing in Vegas. But she can dress it up and get the affluent men's. Yeah, that's what and then she hitches a ride as soon as that town is dead.
Mm-hmm. That's what steals the man's money.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm all about it.
And she eventually meets this man who's a restaurateur in Seattle named David. And he is, I think at the start, just emotionally abusive, but she's like, whatever, I can handle it. And then she's about to leave him and she gets pregnant. And so she has this daughter, and then he becomes physically abusive and she can't leave. And she tries to leave and goes to Boise for a while. She goes to beauty school there, where we find out that Sydney's Waverly talent is that she does great hair.
Yeah,
the spectrum of witch talents, this one's pretty lame, I think.
Well, I mean, but I think that it says a lot more about their personalities than...
Yeah.
It's not just that Sydney can do great hair. That's definitely the expression of it, but it's that she can look at someone and say,
no,
this is their person, this is that person's defining character trait. She meets a house. Yeah, she meets a housekeeper at one point, and she's like, that woman hates mistakes, and that sort of thing. And she can also figure out what's going to bring out better parts of your personality and give you like an innate confidence via your hair.
Yeah.
And you'll like have a better day. You'll have better luck. Your mechanics won't try to fuck you financially with your car. Oh boy, that went places.
Yeah, it did. Okay, so she's stuck with this guy David in Seattle, and she plans he's on a trip, and she plans this escape. She had a friend that helped her get a car, and the friend's gonna, she gets Bay out and goes and gets this car with her friend.
I'm sorry, but I have to say something. Sydney and Bay, her daughter, are living in this townhouse with her incredibly abusive partner. He regularly sexually assaults her in addition to hitting her and all the things. And apparently he is just charming enough to get the old lady next door to report on Sydney and Bay, even while, like, she describes going to the park. And this angel, Greta, finally sees her and works up the courage to be like, hi, I am thinking you're not okay. Because she can literally see bruises on Sydney's body. Meanwhile, this absolute monster of an old woman is like, no, that's right. That's how a man should treat a woman. And I'm going to make sure that she is stuck in that apartment till the day she fucking dies. Until he kills her. That is how long she should be with this man. Susan should have a piano fall on her. Susan needs some karmic fucking retribution.
I would like to tell our listener, whoever you are out there, that Melody is that tirade came from about 1 to 2 sentences in the book where it said the lady next door, Susan, like David asked her to check on them and report if they left, which fair extrapolation.
No, fuck that lady. Piano.
But this is like a conversation that happened.
Piano on the cabeza. Nope. Done. She and her cats. Nope.
So they escape. I thought the description of this escape where they're like waiting for Greta to bring the car around was really, really good, where she like has this panic attack. Like it was really a effective part of the book.
Well, and so much of this and so much of the descriptions later on, it's like tragically mundane. It makes it even more powerful because it's not graphic. It's not in the moment. There's no like, real time beating, but just her descriptions of how every day this treatment has become is even more unsettling than a really graphic description. It's I'm getting chills right now just remembering.
It was really good. Like the way she ends up in this parking lot and Greta's not there with the car and she just sits down on the curb and puts her face in her hands. It's heartbreaking. It's a really good.
Bay goes and comforts her and she's like, it's going to be okay, mama.
Like
and
kids do.
Oh God, Bay slayed me all through this book because Bay's Waverly talent is that she knows where things belong. From like, where her dad is going to want his socks at that moment so he doesn't beat her mom, to where the silverware should live, to who should be with who because they are there together, like they should be together forever. Bay is the best.
Yeah. When things are from her perspective, it's delightful. So Sydney arrives back in Bascom with some suitcases, and like we said, her and Claire kind of have a little bit of a it's awkward at the beginning because she just kind of shows up. She's been gone for 10 years. Claire doesn't know where. Sydney's not going to tell her where. There's kind of this animosity between the two of them. But Claire offers Sydney a job working at her catering business. She asks her to help out. And in exchange, like, Claire will watch Bae sometimes. They kind of got this thing. So the first catering thing that they do is a catering event at Hunter John and his wife Emma's place. And Emma is a Clark woman who moved in on Hunter John as soon as Sydney left. And she was the one that Hunter John's parents wanted him to marry his whole life.
Well, and not only that, but we find out that Emma is a tragic little creature, isn't she? Woof. Poor thing. She has been taught that she is good for one thing and she has one goal in life, and that is how to attain it, and that is how she should measure her self-worth. It is sex and keeping a wealthy man. And
like all Clark women.
All Clark women. Oh my God. And embrace your talent, ladies, right? I'm all about that. But her mother, talk about another goddamn monster.
God, she is a monster.
She's
incredible. This is not extrapolated from one line in the book.
Oh, no.
This is an actual character this time.
Yeah, we took no leaps in this one, as I am wont to do. No, so Emma, poor Emma, she thinks that her mother just is almost omniscient in her ability to manipulate other people's lives. And she really values what her mother thinks, which is problematic because her mother is a horrible person. And she was coached by her mother throughout high school while Hunter John was slumming it to be Sydney's best friend and sabotage their relationship from the outside.
Yeah.
So everyone knows that Clark women can make fruit flies come out of their vagina in a good way. That was weird.
Wait, that was a weird.
Nope, don't like it.
No,
I'll cut
we
that.
Need to examine this. Do not edit that. I want to know what your
I meant they can do crazy tricks with their vagina, and somehow fruit flies popped out of my mouth. That's disgusting. Woof. I was thinking, what was I thinking? Butterflies.
I don't.
And somehow fruit flies.
But that makes me think there's something rotten in there.
Same. No, as soon as I said it, I tried to grab it with my hands. Woo! Yeah. I hated that. You're welcome, listener.
You need to talk to your therapist about that one for sure.
I probably do. Okay. Well, butterflies and rainbows come out of their vaginas.
That's better.
And so Sydney talks to Emma and she's like, we're going to have sex for the first time, thinking she's talking to her best friend. And Emma's like, okay, why don't I tell you all the ways to give a horrible teeth-filled blowjob and tell you that sex hurts a ton. Weird shit. The book doesn't say any of this out loud. I'm just coming up with
it just says that she told her to do it wrong and she told her that it was going to be scary. So Emma's terrible monster mother decides to have this event at their house catered by Claire's catering company because she's heard from the town gossip family that Sydney's back in town. So she's worried Sydney's back in town. Hunter John really loved her and she's going to take Hunter John away from Emma, which is just complete fabrication in the minds of these Clark women. They've just decided that Sydney's back in town, so she must be back for Hunter John. So they set her up to be a caterer at this event so that Hunter John will see her as the help instead of, to embarrass her, basically. And it is embarrassing.
Well, I was asking Claire to make food that will make the guests feel like they're incredibly wealthy and super in love. Because they're trying to set up this juxtaposition of beautiful and idyllic and tiny-waisted and gorgeous against the servants, the servant class, if you will.
Right. And Sydney is embarrassed, and she doesn't know that Emma married Hunter John, and she realizes it's a setup, and she gets upset.
And Claire, with all of her abandonment issues, is like, oh no, I fucked it up.
She's going to leave.
And she's going to leave me and the whole thing. And so she has...
Poisons the food?
Basically. So Sydney calls Tyler because they've struck up this adorable friendship. And she's like, Tyler, you need to come get me as soon as possible. And so Claire calls him back and she's like, I need to fix this. I need you to get a bunch of these ingredients and she sabotages the dessert buffet. And it's lovely.
Then before the end of the night, like Sydney goes home early and she gets all these calls from all the women there, like apologizing and saying they're so sorry that Emma had set her up and this kind of thing. So there are a few other love stories that kind of take place in the background. And I think now is probably a good time to just kind of hit on those.
Yeah, I like
quickly.
that.
One of them is Emma and Hunter John, because they never really encounter our two main sisters again, but we kind of follow them. And Emma's got this in her head. And I actually really like this. I have a feeling you don't. You're going to go off on a tirade here. But Emma's got it in her head.
A patented melody tirade?
Yeah. TM. That Hunter John's going to leave her for Sydney. Like, Sydney's back in town. Now she's threatened. So she's like throwing herself at him in every which way and like is showing up naked in his office. Like, just being very, very desperate in a way that's really turning Hunter John off. And she keeps bringing up Sydney and being like, Sydney looked old today, don't you think? And he's just like, stop fucking doing this. And this kind of goes on until its ultimate conclusion, where Hunter John like sends the kids out of the house and is just like, what the fuck are you doing? And she's like, you're going to leave me for her. And he's like, no. I really liked that this was a complete neuroses and fabrication in the minds of Emma and her mother and not a real thing. And she just like made this competition in her head that didn't exist, and it drove her just off the rails. Because I think women do that so much, and this was a really good representation of this, because it keeps clipping back to Sydney just like doing other shit and not caring at all about Hunter John, and then clipping back to Emma just being like, she's stealing my man.
You think that is what I was going to go on a tirade about?
Yeah.
No, I loved it. And the reason is yes, because when you take an entire human being and you boil them down to sex and keeping a man, there's going to be neuroses. If you take a little girl and you tell her whole life that she is only worth this one thing, and you surround her with people who look at the human woman like that, then of course. Of course. And this is a beautiful moment. As much as Hunter John is an absolute toolbox, he is a great partner, because as they're talking about this, he's like, I have a feeling that I didn't know Sydney was in our relationship for the past 10 years, because he doesn't know that the way this relationship started is that Emma got pregnant on purpose, thinking that he was going to go off to school and leave her. And Emma has lived her whole marriage terrified that Hunter John only wants her for sex. She wants to know that he actually loves her. I loved it. And he basically told her, I love you, and I love our kids, and I love our life, and none of this matters because goals change, and I don't want this woman. She's not my person. You're my person. I loved it. No. Okay. It was great. All right. Because really, it's real life. If you make a girl fucking patriarchy, man.
I wish you guys or you guy could see Melody right now, because her whole face like scrunched up.
So mad. Also, I'm sorry, real quick. I casted Emma in my brain. Do you want to know who it is?
Sure.
Anna Camp. Anna Camp.
Anna Camp would be a great Emma.
Yeah, she was from True Blood, and she was in Good Girls Revolt, which is an Amazon original that really needed to get renewed and fucking didn't.
I didn't know you watched that.
Oh, of course that was a tragedy. I did. Are you kidding?
She was in Pitch Perfect.
She was in Pitch Perfect. That is the like the mainstream thing. She was so good, and she would be perfect for this role because this is literally her typecast. So
yeah. Okay, so the other love stories really quickly. There's an older gay gentleman named Fred and his partner. And I honestly can't remember his partner's name right now. James. And James is kind of slowly leaving Fred. And the reason behind it is that James has kind of made every decision in their relationship and drawn Fred out for the past, 30 years or something like that, 20 years. And, Fred, without understanding, took James for granted and just did not take any initiative in anything. And so James is kind of fading away. And it's a particularly sad love story, because they break up and they just are broken up, and and Fred really, really wants James to come back, and it never happens. But
however, we get a beautiful friendship love story that is so nice.
Because Fred moves in with Eve and Elle, our favorite old lady, and they have this great
he becomes her GBF.
Yeah, and Eve and Elle's husband died long ago, and so it's very nice to have Fred around, and he does handyman stuff around the house.
Cooks a lot for her.
Yeah, cooks for her, and she gives him hilarious company and a roof over his head. So back to what's important, which is Claire and Sydney, our main characters, and particularly Claire and Tyler, the sexy art teacher. Tyler is enamored with Claire, partially because he ate one of the apples from the apple tree and immediately had a vision of beautiful Claire wearing a headband in like with a beautiful white dress with short hair. And he was like, va va voom. And he doesn't know that it's a magical apple.
Right. And he had been glowing purple before that. So that really just intensified the feelings.
Right. And so Claire can tell, he's her next door neighbor. So they're always kind of in each other's faces. Since Tyler's a teacher and it's the summertime, he has nothing better to do than kind of like stand outside and pine.
It's really cute.
Toward their house. And like
one of my
Claire's
favorite
window.
One of my favorite little details is he'll like pace his backyard outside of Sydney's window. So Sydney's like, this fucker is like keeping me up at night. He's like my goddamn personal nightlight, just glowing purple over there. Can you please put him out of his misery? Because I need some sleep.
Right. So Claire doesn't want to fall in love with him, even though he's clearly like
he's in it forever.
Claire. Yeah. And
this man is not leaving Claire.
No. And so Claire keeps like bringing him various like casseroles and various products from the garden to make him like, some are like to remember the good times or to see clearly or whatever. And she thinks that will make him remember like, oh, previously I had more fun with women, or I can see clearly now Claire is an old ugly bag. And instead it's just like making him fall more in love with her. And he's just like, a casserole? Gee, I'm so happy. So this kind of culminates on the 4th of July, because there's a big 4th of July celebration where the Waverly sisters sell honeysuckle wine. It's kind of a tradition. And this is also the time where Sydney's love story kind of kicks up, and she sees Henry Hopkins for the first time since elementary school.
And he will not stop staring.
Yeah, he stares at her for like 30 minutes. And he's a farmer. He has a dairy with his father, or his grandfather, actually. Outside of town. And he and Sydney were best friends in elementary school until 6th grade, when she came back from summer vacation with boobs, and he couldn't talk to her anymore. So he just avoided her for the rest of his life. And now she's back, and he's like, oh, I'd really like to talk to Sydney Waverly. And then he does on the 4th of July. He goes and sits with them, and they kind of they spark their friendship up again. And then Tyler shows up at the celebration, and Sydney is loading up not Sydney. Claire is loading up the honeysuckle wine in the car. And Tyler decides it's time. It's time 120 pages into this book.
Oh, no. Try 160.
I'm sorry, Mel. I'm sorry. But it was romantic until then, right?
It totally was.
It's a slow burn, guys.
If you read this book thinking that there's going to be sexy times immediately, you're just going to be reading it like waiting for the sexy times. I just wish I had known so that I could really enjoy the levels, because there are levels, there's character development, there's a lot of plot setup, there's a lot of interweaving stories that are truly beautiful and magical. I was just waiting for the penis to come out.
And you said in the text, when are they going to, I think, bang or something like that? And I said, Melanie, they are, but they're going to make love.
And then I said, blurg.
Yes, you did. So but this kiss is good kiss.
It's a, yes.
So like, I felt like this kiss was worth waiting for. He's like pinning her up against the van. They can't like
Yes.
They can't pry themselves away from each other. It's good.
It's really, really good. Well, and my consent boner was super happy because although
God,
he never...
No, go for it.
So, and this is weird because my consent boner was super happy, even though she quite literally said, "Get away from me, Tyler." And so he was like, "Are you scared of love? Are you scared of me? Are you scared of a kiss?" And she's like, "No one in their right mind is scared of a kiss." And then he's like,
don't
really
be
close
stupid,
to her.
Tyler.
Yeah, don't be dumb, Tyler. And so he's really close to her, and she's like, she backs up against the van, and the text says that he puts one of his hands on the van near her shoulder, and she could easily, just move laterally and get out from in between them, but she doesn't want to. And then she sees the little crow's feet at his eyes, and then she sees that his ear was pierced, and then she's like, "Oh, your mouth is so mesmerizing. Oh, I don't want to go anywhere." And so there was definitely some implicit but raging consent.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
I
then
love that for something to be hot for you, it just has to not be illegal. Like that's where you're like, they aren't breaking any laws tonight.
We all have our standards, Erin. That
Right.
one is mine. Okay, wait. But then the casual mysticism as they're kissing, she's getting these images from him in her brainsicle, where they're like growing old and having babies and doing all the things. And meanwhile, you don't know this yet, but he's getting images from her that's like just this raging sexual frustration. Like her whole body starts heating up in a way that's almost painful. And she's a little bit like Rogue from X-Men, because they both, when they say kisses make you weak-kneed, instead of that, when they finally break away, Tyler can't move because his energy has been drained from this kiss. It's just so hotty-totty.
It was a good kiss.
It was a good one.
It might be one of the better kisses I've ever read.
My note, however, is we're 168 pages in, and there's only been one mystical kiss.
I'm sorry. I should have warned you. I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I mean, that's the only thing I wanted. Okay, but the book is, I just have to make one note. There is some really lovely phrasing and a lot of great imagery. One of them that I wrote down, it's not even one of the best ones, but it's when I had my computer near the book. She was describing the upstairs portion of their house, and she says, "Summer was filling the house, tightening it with heat." And I was like, oh, that's exactly how that feels. But I had never thought about it in that way.
There's a lot of really beautiful writing in this book.
A lot of gorgeous language.
So the next big thing that happens here is that Sydney, I don't remember where she went or what the deal was. She may have they may have gone off with Henry for the day at the farm.
Yes.
Because she goes with Henry to the farm, takes Bay with her so that Bay can see the cows.
Well, Bay knows where her mother belongs. And so at the grocery store, okay, so Evanelle had gone out to his house to give them maraschino cherries, and she didn't know why. This was like a week ago. So then Henry is at the grocery store at the same time they are, because he's getting sundae, hot fudge sundae supplies, because his grandfather wanted to use the maraschino cherries, particularly that day, because that's why they needed them, so that he could reconnect with Sydney and start bonding with Bay. And so the moment he's like, "Do you want to come and have hot fudge sundaes with us?" Bay's like, "Yeah, I love cows and I love all the things that I've never loved before." And Sydney's like, "I don't know why." Okay, we can go out there.
What is this sudden interest in cows?
Yeah, I like them. I like them. It's where we belong.
Yeah. So Bay decides that her mom belongs with Henry and they belong on the farm. So they go out there and they don't come home until the middle of the night. And Claire thinks Sydney's left because Sydney could take off at any moment and she didn't know where she was and her phone wasn't working or whatever. And so she's freaking out when they get home and she has this kind of release of emotions. And so she goes out in the garden and starts pulling up weeds and stuff.
Well,
and
because she has been literally singeing things with her hands.
Yeah.
And the house is like shaking a little bit because Claire is, I mean, just vibrating with panic.
We describe her as a raw nerve.
Yes.
And she's in the garden, like, trying to do herb stuff, and she's, like, cooking all the herbs with her hands. Like, it's very fragrant, like mint and, you know, whatever, all these different herbs. So Sydney calls Tyler. She's like, Tyler, you need to go back into the garden because Claire's having a moment.
Yeah, Claire needs you, she says,
yeah.
which is really sweet.
So Sydney and Bae go to bed, and Tyler goes out to the garden to see what's going on with Claire. And here it is, Mel. Here's your first sexy time.
Kind of.
Kind of.
There's a lot of fucking foreplay, all right? And they don't even describe... Okay. So it's very hot, don't get me wrong. He comes over and she's like distraught. And at first she's like, get away from me, get away from me, get away from me. No, come closer. And
he's so sexified by her when he sees her in the garden in her nightgown that he stops and puts his like knees, his head between his knees.
Yes,
like,
just for a moment.
Yeah.
Just to gather himself before approaching.
Right.
And then she starts crying and he actually like falls to his knees because he's so overwhelmed by like the emotion that she's radiating. So they kiss and hug and she puts her cheek over his heart and it's all really, really sweet. So basically what I loved about this is just that Tyler's up for anything. He's like, oh, please don't cry. Like, you know, I want to be here for you. And what do you need? And she's like, no, make it better. Don't stop kissing me. Don't stop touching me. Like, make me feel better. And he's like, I'll do anything just to make you stop crying. And she says, will you not remember this tomorrow? And he was like, okay, I can do that for you if that's what you need.
Right.
I don't know. It was really, really gorgeous. The author is obviously not afraid of the word breast. She has no problem describing like, you know, kissing breasts and she actually uses the word nipple, but she can't she just won't describe anything else. And so
she doesn't go to Penis Town.
No, so the thing that drives me a little crazy is that every time we have some sort of sexy time start, it essentially, like in a movie, it would fade to black. But then the next morning, we get the little tidbit that they didn't actually have penetrative sex.
Right.
Because Claire says, I can't believe he would do all of that only for my pleasure and not get anything himself. As if like just the act isn't enough. You know, like a lot of times the helping someone else feel good is just as good as, well, maybe not just as, but yeah.
No. Claire doesn't think that way. That's how Tyler was thinking, but that's not how Claire was thinking.
No.
And they wake up naked in the garden.
Yes,
Claire's freaking out. Yeah, I like that too. Like, and Tyler's like just smiling, like just grinning ear to ear, and she's like trying to, like gathering her things and like trying to
like
get
horrified.
her shit together. And he's just like, yeah, and he's just like, "Good morning, like how are you?"
Like, hi.
And she's like, "Terrible." Yeah, and then they find that the tree, the apple tree that's personified, has written "thank you" in the dirt from underneath the ground, like with its roots, to be like, thanks, finally, Claire. Like, Jesus Christ, like you've been tormenting this house and this tree with your sexual frustration for too long.
Yeah,
so
I do like because she's walking away from him. She's like, fuck, I gotta get out of here. And he's like, you're welcome. And she like rounds on him to be like, you arrogant, and then sees that the tree has written this, and she's like, I didn't write that, and leaves. Really cute.
So then, cute. Like, you know, the next big thing that happens with them is that Claire kind of has a change in her where she's like, she decides that she can accept love. Like, her and Sydney have some conversations, and she's like, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there.
Well, and more than anything, Sydney gives her a haircut, remember?
Oh, right. Sorry.
Because Sydney can't get any business in town because fucking Ariel Clark, that monster, is basically blackballing her at the nicest salon in town.
Right.
And so she's just been spending weeks just sweeping up cuttings from other people and attempting to get business and not having any. So Claire goes in because she really wants her sister to stay. And she sits down and she says, give me a haircut. And
Claire
Sydney
has like bedraggled long hair. She hasn't had a haircut in years.
Yeah, she's had
got this,
3
like,
haircuts in her life. And because that's how her grandmother wore her hair. So that's how she's going to wear her hair.
Right.
And Sydney just asked her, do you trust me? And then she gets this sex hair. She gets this gorgeous, like, I'm going to bring out all the best parts of your personality. And it's short. So a bunch of, she can no longer hide behind her hair is a big through line. And so that's part of the component of Claire saying, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and take a risk on this man who is not a risk at all.
And Claire feels very different because now her neck is exposed. Like a lot of times her long hair was like covering her breasts and now she's kind of like all out there. And so she's like,
she's feeling her womanly oats.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put on makeup.
Oh,
which is like a first.
Bound chicka.
I'm going to do my hair. I'm going to put on this dress. So she's going to go over to Tyler's house.
She has heels on.
Ooh. Yeah. And she's going to go over there and be like, take me. So she goes downstairs and she's like, hey, Sydney, do I look okay? And Sydney's like, God, you always look okay. And then she looks up and she's like, whoa, like you look really good. And then
but also Tyler doesn't need that, Claire. He's a sure thing. If you could go over there in a burlap sack covered in mud and he would lick it off of you. Yeah, basically.
They don't describe what Claire's wearing very much, but when they do, it's like loose khakis and a button-down shirt covered in mud. It's always Crocs.
I imagine a lot of house dresses, you know.
They talk about her gardening clogs several times, which I assume are Crocs. That's what my brain did.
Yeah, same.
So anyway, so she goes over to Tyler's house and she kind of like presents herself of like, here I am.
Can I come in?
And he's got a girl over there named Rachel, who he's like, here's my friend Rachel. She's staying for 3 days. And Claire's just like,
gotta go. Oh, no.
She's so sexy and I can see her bra. Because I guess her like bra strap was out or whatever.
Right.
And Claire's got it in her head that Rachel like wants Tyler and is like competing with her for Tyler and is here because they used to be in a relationship and she's trying to get him back and that's why she's staying with him.
Waverly women are very intuitive, so I don't think she's wrong.
It may be true. It may not be true.
But Tyler has given her no indication that he cares, if that's true.
No indication that he's interested. And really, she has no indication from Rachel either, unless there's some kind of intuitive nature that's going on with the witchy qualities of these two women.
Yeah, I think there was a moment where I was like, Claire, I think she's just wearing a trendy shirt and you can see her bra strap, which doesn't equal I want to jump Tyler's bones. It just equals I don't live in Bascom, North Carolina, and I know where an H&M is. Like,
but part of it to me, I really liked this because I love that there were these like stints of unnecessary competition between women because of like a manifested, like fabricated thing in their mind that they thought this other woman was moving in on them. And it always, every time in this book, whether it's between the sisters or Claire and Rachel or Emma and Sydney, it always turns out to be wrong. Like none of these women are out to get each other and they keep thinking that they are.
Well, but they also,
I really like
they
that.
also really embrace the idea and they're just like, oh, okay, well then that's fine. Then
I'm silly.
We can be friends or we can be, I'm going to look out for you in really important ways, even if we're never friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really good. Well, and I also so Claire quite literally runs away. She just books it out of there. Meanwhile, Tyler's like, no, you don't have to go. Oh, bye.
No.
And she goes in and she's like, Sydney, I'm a dumbass. Like, he has a girl there and I'm going to go shower and I'm going to shower off this sex makeup because I'm a dummy. And like, there was no drama. There was no anything because Tyler just like, hey, Rachel, why don't you hang and I'm going to go fix this. Mm-hmm. So I did get a little
he's a mature adult man
who knows what he wants. Like he's a person who knows what he wants, and he's not going to let this bullshit get him down. So he just walks into her bedroom, which is a little weird, but I didn't hate it.
But Sydney told him to go in there.
She was did. Like, she did. So now Claire's in a robe, and her hair is all wet. And he's like, hey, why did you come over to my house? And she's like, no reason. And he's like, no. I want to know why you came over. And she goes, I will die. If you make me say it out loud, I will die here just of embarrassment. And he was like, so I'm guessing it wasn't a dinner or a movie. It was the garden. And she's like, ah. And
she's
so
like,
then,
yeah, I didn't forget. You didn't forget. No one forgot.
Nobody forgot. And he's like, I can't forget anything about you. I basically think about you all the time. Okay, now my mouth is on yours. And so then he takes off her robe, or he like opens her robe, and she falls onto the bed, and he takes off his shirt because he knows that she needs this skin to skin contact. And they smooch. And then she's like, there are other people within 50 miles of us, so we can't have sex.
which is fucking bullshit. Because first of all, he's like, she says, we can't do this with Sydney and Bay in the house.
Which is
fucking bullshit.
Ridiculous.
Because they just had sex publicly outside in the garden with Sydney and Bay in the house. And
but Claire was
assumedly
not in her
awake.
Right mind. Claire was in turmoil at that point, so who the fuck knows what she was thinking? Not to mention
the garden gate was unlocked as well.
Sydney would love to go for a walk. Sydney would have no problem getting the fuck out of Dodge so that her sister can have some fun times by herself.
But even more, Tyler is like, fine. Let's just get rid of Rachel for a second.
Yeah, I'll tell her to go to a movie.
Go sightsee in Bascom or whatever, Rachel.
And get some ice cream, like, Rachel.
No. You can't get rid of Rachel. And so they're like, okay, we'll have to wait until
3
Rachel leaves.
Days.
Which is bullshit. This is stupid. This is manufactured.
It totally is. But the one thing that I did like about it, like I said, this is a skip heartbeat book because, it's a slow burn. There's a lot of anticipation, and they actually talk about that. They're like, expectation can be, really good too, right? And so each morning, like before dawn, they can't sleep because they want each other so badly, and so they'll meet out in the garden and whisper sweet nothings to each other and make out and grope. And I like it because Claire is 34 years old. She's never been on a date. She's never had a person interested in her. She's never opened herself up to that. And so I did like it because she's getting that kind of like adolescent, we're going to sit in the movies and neck kind of experience before, committing to anything more physically. I don't know. I thought it was a nice touch for them because she really needed to sort of come around. And there is that beautiful part of a new relationship where everything is new and fresh, and just like a caress on a forearm can send lightning bolts straight to your doodah. And like, that's what she's experiencing for 3 days. And so I dug that. I empathized with that in a really satisfactory way.
Yeah, I like that they had this anticipation of 3 days. I just felt like plot-wise, it was dumb. A little bit manufactured and dumb. Like, I wish there would have been a better device to make them have to wait. That's totally all. I like that they waited. So then they get together and have the sex, right? After the 3 days? But the author doesn't describe it.
No. So this bitch... So Claire's in her room. She sneaks into Sydney's room because Sydney's the one with the view of Tyler's house. And she watches Tyler put Rachel into a cab. And then he stands in his front yard looking longingly at the Waverly house, just sort of willing her to come outside. And Sydney's like, go fuck already. I am over this. She's like, got her pillow
awake all night.
Yeah, she's got her pillow over her head. And Claire's like, oh, I didn't know you were awake. And she's like, just get out of here. And so she goes to the front yard, and the only description we get is that they run to each other in between the houses, and he grabs her hand, and then they walk into the house, and 9 months later, a baby is born.
I'm sorry. Mariah is her name. I'm sorry.
So mad.
It's not that I'm not just as frustrated as you are. It's just that when we were going to have like fall Halloween books, for October, and I was like, ooh, you have to read Garden Spells. I just forgot. I just had this like
fucking dengue fever, man.
I know. I'm sorry. I just had this like wonderful memory of this book being so delightful when I was delusional.
No,
which it is delightful, but I forgot that there was like barely any sex in it. I'm sorry. Like
there is literally no sex.
I guess.
Don't say barely any, madam.
I'm sorry.
Literally none. If I had just known that. It's a way to be a pal. I don't know.
If it makes you feel any better, rereading this, I felt the same way. I'm like, Aaron, why didn't you tell me, Aaron, that there wasn't going to be sex in this book? Dengue fever, Aaron. Why didn't you alert normal Aaron without dengue fever?
Yeah, I like that our first intro episode, you're like, I like there to be sex in a romance novel. And then you pull this bullshit out on me.
Tyler had a working penis that he used on her. It's not like
I don't know that. Do I? No. I don't know that. They could have gone to a sperm bank at some point. Like I have no proof, Aaron. I didn't even get to see his penis.
Again,
I don't even know if he has one.
Under any other circumstances, I would be just as frustrated as you. But since I was the one who advocated and chose this book, I just feel like I have to keep apologizing.
You should.
I know.
I mean, I still love you, and I really enjoyed this book. I really, 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 really enjoyed it. And it made me cry a couple times. And her Halloween treat was wonderful, but it was very one level. And it was very like, it was a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of experience. Whereas this, you actually do get to see the levels of different relationships, and you get to feel that sort of high school, you know, young, not even high school. I don't know if I was kissing anybody in high school.
There's butterflies.
Yes, you get butterflies all over the place. So that's really nice. There's just zero completion.
Right.
For anyone.
Okay, so they have sex, assumedly, or go to a sperm bank. And then the ending crescendo of this thing is that Claire's going to have this dinner party in her backyard.
Yeah.
And she's invited everybody. Even Elle's coming. I think Henry came. Obviously, the two couples plus even Elle, I think, is who's there.
Yeah, and they're calling it, Sydney keeps on calling it her deflowering celebration, which I really liked. And then I really liked that instead of being puritanical about it, it's not that. Claire's hang-ups are not puritanical. So when Sydney says that, she's like, stop, you make me sound like a dead plant. Like, that's what gets her, is like, do not make me akin to a dead piece of vegetation. That offends me as a master gardener.
Yeah, exactly.
Who just has the greenest of thumbs. Yeah,
so they're gonna have this party.
So up until this point, one of the reasons that Sydney went home is that she kept on smelling lavender, and she kept on getting wisps of what home smells like when she was in Seattle in that awful situation. And now all the Waverly women in the house have been smelling this fucker's cologne, and it's frightening them. I loved the scene where Sydney went into Claire's room, I think, to tell her what had happened when she finally opens up to her, and they both smell the cologne.
With David, the abusive guy. Yeah.
And they both smell the cologne and like huddle into bed together, and then Bae shows up because she also smelled the cologne. They were like, hurry, get in. And they just put themselves into a cocoon of familial safety. And it's just the sweetest.
It was good. So
deflowering celebration.
Sydney accidentally left, and she knows this. She accidentally left in Seattle an envelope of photos of her mother that were underneath the couch. And one of the photos of her mother included her holding up a sign that said, "Goodbye, Bascom," like, fuck North Carolina or something like that. And she knows that it's in the house, and she knows that David could use this to find her. And he eventually does. And he pulls up to a gas station outside of Bascom, and who's there but the Clark women. And he shows them the picture of Sydney, who went by the name Cindy when she was in Seattle. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's Sydney Waverly.
Well, and I really like this because, once again, Emma is a tragic little creature because she's naturally not a giant slore bag, unlike her mother. So her mother's like, oh, that's Sydney Waverly. She's in me, and she tried to steal my girl's husband. And Emma's like, no, she didn't. No, she didn't. And she starts getting a really weird vibe from David the abuser. And she's really uncomfortable with the fact that her mother is telling him about Sydney's daughter. She's really uncomfortable with the amount that her mother is disclosing out of retribution, out of like, these aren't my people. Mm-hmm. And Emma gets the feeling that she's putting her in some sort of danger.
Right.
And I really, really enjoyed that about her.
Yeah. So Emma goes and tries to warn her. She goes into the gas station and calls Sydney and tries to say, hey, there's this guy looking for you. My mom gave him way too much information about you and your daughter. And I've just got this real bad feeling. Be careful. Unfortunately, Sydney doesn't get that call because they are having the deflowering celebration in the backyard. So the celebration is ongoing. Henry is in the kitchen with Sydney. I forget what he says. What is... he says something real sweet.
Super sweet. Well, before that, they had gone on a walk and...
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, I think you should go out with the receptionist at my salon. And he was like, I can't do that. And he describes it in this really beautiful way that you should just read for yourself.
And yeah, so he says he loves her and she's like, cool. All right. And like just lives her life. And then... I don't know. I don't remember what he says in the kitchen, but it was sweet. And she like just kisses him against the refrigerator.
Yeah, she just sort of pounces. Yeah. And it's lovely.
And there's these colorful napkins that were on top of the refrigerator that come like raining down on them. Like the house is like saying yay.
The house was celebrating.
Yeah.
And then he looks at her after this hot kiss and he's like, well, now there's no chance that I'm going out with this receptionist.
Yeah, it was really cute. And she says, he's like, why'd you just kiss me? And she's like, I wanted to be sure of something. And he's like, be sure of what? And she's like, I'll tell you later. So then they're doing their dinner in the backyard and David the abuser shows up.
Well, because the apple tree has been acting a fool up until this point. It's been like trying to pull the table away. It's been throwing apples at people. It's been doing a lot of like shivering and warning and stuff like that. And David the abuser shows up and they smell his cologne and Sydney tells Bae to run behind the apple tree to hide. Mm-hmm. And she immediately, like any incredible mother would, was like, don't worry, everyone. I'm just going to leave with David.
I'll just go with him.
Yep. And whispers to Claire and I mean, I cried. She was like, take care of Bae because she knew that she would die if she went with him.
Listener, whoever you
this is Melody Cries It Sweet
Melody just started crying. And I didn't even think this was that sad in the book, but since Melody's crying, now I'm crying.
No, I just cry.
This wasn't even a sad part, but I just can't watch it.
No, it was beautiful. So much of this book is just like gorgeous.
No. Okay, so she tries to go with him and he's having none of it because he's pissed off. He's out for blood now. So he points the gun. He has a gun. He points a gun at Tyler and is like, is this the guy you're fucking? Like, is this him? Because he's going to kill whichever of these men that she's having sex with. And then Henry jumps in front of the bullet. Henry gets shot in the shoulder. Don't worry, guys. He's fine. This isn't that kind of book. But nope. Evenelle tends to Henry. They have this tense verbal situation in the backyard, and then he sees Bae behind the apple tree and he's like,
no, he calls out to her. He's like, where's my girl? Don't like come see daddy. And the apple tree throws an apple at his feet, but he doesn't see that nor know about the tree. So he's like, oh, does my little girl want me to eat this apple? Is that what's going on? And takes a fateful bite.
And then he sees the most important event in his life, which is apparently getting shivved in prison, we think, at the end of this thing. And he's like horrified. He turns white and Sydney's like, oh, did you just have a vision of somebody hurting you? Like, is somebody going to hurt you now? Is that what's going to happen? And if you stay here, by the way, we're going to make sure that does happen to you, whatever that was. And he freaks out and runs away and everything's happy. Eventually they find out that Tyler is very like... I really like this about Tyler. He's like, are we gonna call the police? Because, they call an ambulance. And Tyler's like, how about the police as well, since a man was shot? And they're like, nah, the apple tree scared him away. And he's like, what? No. Like, the police need to scare him away.
That is not a rational response.
Because still Tyler doesn't know about the apple tree. Or maybe he does. He maybe learns in this moment. But... the police are called, and in a chase, David crashes a car. Yeah, and he goes to jail. He tries to hang himself in the jail so that whatever he had the vision of happening to him, probably in prison, does not happen. So, but he goes to prison, so I assume it does. And happily ever after, right?
Yeah, we find out that, Claire tells everyone that she's pregnant, and then...
Yeah, Evenelle brings baby's breath to both Sydney and...
both ladies.
And Claire, which could mean babies, could mean marriage, but probably means both for both of them.
That's right, but we don't actually know. I mean, I'm sure they moved to the dairy farm, and it's wonderful. And Tyler moves in.
Moves in with Claire. Yeah, Tyler moves in with Claire, which makes sense because he had moved in months before in his house next door, and he never unpacked. Which probably they never explicitly say it, but that means that he was never supposed to be there. I love this book.
It was a lovely book. I was touched in a lot of my heart places.
Yeah, but not a lot of my lady part places. So we will make sure that the next book takes us to Pound Town.
Or at least we're going to goddamn try. Who knows? All right, what's your self-love recommendation this week?
I took a baking class with two of my friends last week, and we learned how to make fancy Parisian macarons. And if I didn't pronounce that right, I don't care, listener. I just assume our one listener is very snobby about that. I don't know why.
Apparently.
Yeah, and it was very complicated, but it was a very nice evening, mostly because they fed us throughout the night. It was just like, is a cookie not in your mouth?
The best part about it.
Yeah, so if you're out there, take a baking class. It's very nice. Calms you down.
That's super
Get
fun.
to meet new friends.
Mine
What's yours?
is invest somehow in your corporeal form.
What are you? Melanie, what is that? That is not a thing. Like, I've given you a tangible, sign up for a baking class that everyone can do. What is this? What are you?
Okay, so it was two things this week. One, I finally got back to the gym because my neck was hurting for a little while and I couldn't do a
Such
whole
that
lot.
You couldn't imagine certain sex positions in books. Like, I don't know how he does that with his neck.
No, really, that seems like too much bending backwards in a few places. No, so this week on Thursday, I took this weightlifting class, which just makes me feel like Wonder Woman every time I do it. I'm just like, I can take on the world, even though I'm only lifting, maybe 20 pounds max throughout. Because in this particular weightlifting class, the songs are like 3 to 4 minutes long. So you're doing 500 squats with a weight on your shoulder. So it's not like a powerlifting class. You know what I mean? And then I used a gift certificate for a massage. It was the best Thursday and Friday I've had in a really long time because I felt strong and I felt sore and I felt pampered. And I just think that you should, give your body some love.
I really like that mine was put as many cookies in your mouth as possible. And yours,
no, don't get me wrong,
to invest in your fitness.
Well, no, I also accidentally slipped and fell into an entire bag of potato chips. So, and I'm talking the family size. Like, we're going to host something tomorrow, and I'm going to have to go get more potato chips because I ate all of them. So, life's all about balance. I'm so good at balance. All right. I think we're done.
So
we thank you so much for listening. Follow us on Instagram at Heaving Bosoms.
We will announce the next book there.
Yes. And send us a book recommendation or, just chat with us about how you got into romance novels at our Heaving Bosoms podcast at gmail.com email. And then please subscribe so that, it goes directly into your device wherever you get your podcasts. And if you give us a 5-star review and give us a suggestion, we will definitely do that book. Just remember, guys, remember the bribe. Just think about that bribe and go and review us well. Or just review us.
That's fine too.
That's fine too.
So keep being a badass.
And love yourself as much as you like fruit flies out of your vagina. Oh, God. I'm so embarrassed about that, but you know what?
Don't edit it out.
All right, guys. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Hey, you.
Yes, listener, you. Are you loving the show? If so, please leave a rating and review in your podcast app. The 90 seconds you take to say something nice not only helps new people find the show, but it makes me super smile over at HBHQ. Also, I've had a few people ask, and the answer is yes. We are still doing the 5-star bribe. If you leave us a review with 5 stars, then we'll do whatever book you want. We're real deep into the list, though, so it might be a while. Lilas! Okay, back to the show.